broadcasting?
We're broadcasting. Everyone, welcome to the channel. Its underlying mission is to help more people experience mental, emotional, and financial freedom. And tech sales is a vehicle to get there, as well as the pursuit of personal growth. I'm committed to bringing as much value as possible as I can through this channel. And the way I really do that is by bringing on amazing guests like Tony Hughes, who we have today, who is the #1 sales blogger in the world, a best-selling author of 3 books, the founder and I believe innovation director at Sales IQ, which is an awesome B2B sales training company. The list of accolades goes on, but most importantly, he comes from the real world and he really built himself up along the way. So excited to learn from him. Tony, thanks so much for joining. It's great to see you.
Chris, thank you so much for the invitation, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation as well.
Yeah. So let's just dive into it. We were talking before this interview, and we agreed we wanted to start in this place. How do you sell from a place of purpose and integrity?
I really love that question, Chris. And for me, when I got into selling at the age of 25, I've just turned 60. So I've been in selling a long time. And through a sales career, I ended up progressing through to being the CEO of organizations, running the entire Asia Pacific region for big North American multinationals. So a sales career can be incredibly rewarding. But very early in my sales career, I knew that I needed to be purpose-driven. And for me, selling is about making a positive difference in the lives of others, both personally and professionally for them. And what I mean by that is that when we sell to somebody, it needs to be in their best interests for them to select us and work with us and make that investment in change, both for them in their career and also for their organization, that there's, strong commercial value behind that decision to work with us. And the way I always felt as a seller is that if I'm not genuinely the right fit, when I say I mean the product, service, solution I'm representing, as well as me as an individual, because remember that people buy us first before they ever look at buying, what it is that we're trying to sell. But I wanted to be sure that we were the right fit for them, that we represented best value for money and lowest risk. So selling is first and foremost the transference of belief. In every sales interaction, especially with prospecting, there's some kind of transaction emotionally, psychologically. Either the person we're talking to convinces us that we're not the right fit for them, that they're not interested, that we're not relevant, that they have no need to change, or we succeed in transferring our belief to them that there's an opportunity for them to drive improved results in their role, that it's definitely worth looking at and exploring the potential for change. So very early in my career, I encourage everybody watching this, maybe you're in the construction industry or teaching and you're looking at moving into sales, you feel like it's more lucrative. It's important not just to really chase money in life or material success, but we need to be able to look ourselves in the mirror at the end of every day, feeling good about what it is that we do.
And so you were 25 and you got into sales, and can you talk a little bit about the journey? Like, were you a great salesman right off the bat, or did you have an evolution and challenges that you faced? How did you get to the point that you're a CEO and doing all the things you're doing? What was that journey like?
Well, I'll give you the short version of the crazy story. But at around 25, I went to the USA. I'd worked for my father in a construction business. So we manufactured construction equipment. We built a product where we had 85% market share here, and we decided to take it to the States. So I went into partnership with an incredibly talented financial guy. We moved to the USA, and 2 years later, I got a phone call on my birthday from my stepfather, thinking he was calling to wish me happy birthday. Instead of that, he was calling me to let me know that my mother had liver cancer. Wow. And about 4 weeks later, I'm back in Sydney, Australia. So I moved back from LA to Sydney. And 7 weeks later, my mother was dead. And within a 5-week period of her passing away, my stepdad got into a fight in his first social outing and put a guy into a headlock. And the guy ended up dying. So he was on a murder charge. My sister had tried to commit suicide and was in a psych hospital. Our dog got run over. My car got stolen. My wife left me. I'd cut off emotionally. I lost my faith. I decided that, God wasn't a good person. And then we got news that in the States, our biggest customer had just filed Chapter 11 after being in business for more than 100 years, a company out of Minnesota. Our joint venture partner in California that was manufacturing under license for us also filed Chapter 11. And our biggest customer had sent our product to Japan, where we had no patents, and had decided to copy it. So everything that could kind of go wrong went wrong. Sometimes people say, bad things come in threes. There was a lot more than three. And what I decided with everything going on with my family in Sydney was that I needed to stay here in Sydney and not go back to the States. And we were getting royalties from selling the business in Australia before we moved to the States. We'd got a cash payment and 12 years of royalties. Part of that agreement was that there was a non-compete. So I couldn't go back into the manufacturing industry for construction equipment. And I thought, what? The big thing I learned in the States is that if you cannot sell and market at a personal level, if you're not really good at that, you're nowhere as an entrepreneur. So I decided that no matter what I want to do in business in the future, I needed to go and figure out how to become competent at selling. So I got a job in the radio paging industry. This was back in the era of the very first Wall Street movie that came out with that big crazy phone, that Gordon Gekko was carrying around. So it was the era of the very first cellular mobile phones. Radio paging was big. The ability to get a written message to people in the field. This was before text messaging was a thing. And I decided I wanted to get into B2B selling. I had huge hang-ups about the selling profession. I'd go to barbecues on the weekend and people would ask me, "Hey, Tony, what do you do for a living?" And I really struggled to spit it out. I work as a salesperson. I just couldn't bring myself to say it. I had all of these hang-ups. And for anybody who's looking at entering selling, one of the first things I'd really encourage you to think about is to be successful, we need to learn to get out of our own way. A lot of us tend to sabotage our own success. So this thing of believing in the value that you provide other people, that you are making a positive difference in their life, is just critical. And that's why you need to select an employer and a product, service, or solution that you really believe in. It's critically important.
What a story. And you were hit by a series of cataclysmic events all at once. Like, that's crazy. But I'm sure it built your resilience and set you down a path to do incredible things like you have. But I can't imagine. You got to be strong to go through that. And that's so funny when you talk about the reservations or, you had about selling, because a lot of times selling gets a bad rap. But that book by Daniel Pink, To Sell Is Human. Yes. I haven't even read it, so I shouldn't be talking about it. I just know of it. But it makes me think of, like, when you are a good seller and you become better at sales, you can also become a better person. Like, it's that you can actually become a better person through sales. Don't you think that's possible when you practice with integrity and are empathetic? Like, what are your thoughts?
It's absolutely true. And I'm a big fan of Daniel Pink. If we think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, at the very top of that pyramid is, in essence, self-actualization. Everybody wants to make a difference, really in the lives of others. And, someone I'm a huge fan of, he passed away in 2012, is Zig Ziglar. And, Zig had always said that if you can help enough people get what they want, then you can certainly have what you want. So, your own success should be a byproduct of how successful you are at actually helping others. And the thing for me is, when I first got into selling, because Chris, you asked, was I any good at it when I started? Yep. I was absolutely not a natural. I was awful. And when I joined this company, I had no sales background. So they took a big gamble on hiring me. There are 110 reps in the company in Australia. I ended up becoming not just the number one rep in the company, but the number one rep in the industry. And I set records that to this day have never been broken. For example, I sold to IBM. So I sold to IBM at 70% higher prices than they were paying the incumbent. And IBM is still a customer 35 years later. Can you believe this? There's still a role, believe it or not, for radio paging. And the reason there is, and I'll keep this short because it could get boring, but the reason there is the radio signal strength of paging is about 400 watts, right? It's much, much stronger than an SMS mobile phone messaging signal. And radio paging messages don't get queued and delayed, whereas SMS messages do. So a radio paging message will get into the basement of a building in a computer room where there's Faraday cage kind of effects, and it's almost instant, whereas SMS messaging can get knocked out and then it queues. We've all had a situation where an SMS message turns up 24 hours later on our phone, and you go, how did that happen? It's because the network couldn't find your phone and then queued the message. So in IBM's world, when they've got these service level agreements of being on site if there's an outage, very quickly, and then there's penalties, like that's why there's still a role. But what happened for me was when I first got the job, a couple of guys in the company I became friends with, they told me this later, actually bet money on how quickly it would occur that I got fired or quit, right? Now, they were wrong. But the reason I succeeded was I had this incredible sales manager, and once a week, he'd do a ride along with me. So we'd go out in the field one day a week. I'd fill my calendar full of appointments. I'd, always turn up to meetings early and door knock the neighbors of a business and prospect. We'd go into the meetings, and he made sure not to rescue me. He let me fail. We'd go and do a debrief afterwards.
Wow.
But he really coached me and really helped me be successful with the techniques of selling. And then my confidence built.
You know what? I like that you said he didn't rescue you. I was in a personal growth seminar. It was actually a 7-day retreat with no cell service. It's size seminars. I don't know if you've heard of them, but really incredible experience. And they talked about how a butterfly, if you're trying to help it out of its cocoon, will die. And it's exactly like, don't rescue the butterfly, and and your manager knew that. And that's great leadership. And that's really a gift.
Yeah. And, maybe just to share with people a couple of actionable takeaways we'll have in this conversation. In that first job, let me talk about my first big epiphany. Obviously I figured out I need to get rid of my own hang-ups and get out of my own way, right? And start to believe in the positive value of what I can provide people. So that was the first big thing. But then here was my first epiphany with sales technique. Like most sellers, I had a mix of inbound leads that I would respond to. I try and qualify and close those leads. But then I also needed to do outbound prospecting, right, to bridge my own pipeline gap. And every seller in the world is obviously facing that.
Yes.
The first big epiphany was this. The conversations I was having with an inbound lead, I was having that same kind of conversation when I was doing outbound prospecting. And that was a giant mistake. And here's why. With an inbound lead, the buyer feels like they're in control, and to a degree they are, because they've contacted you and your competition, and they're in the mode of asking us all of these questions. Do you do this? Do you do that? How much, what are your prices? How much do you charge? What does your product cost? And we're trying to positively differentiate is what we're trying to do. When we're doing outbound, no one cares about the attributes of what we offer. Nobody cares until they first made the decision that they need to change state. So what I learned is when I run outbound, I need to talk about the person's opportunity to drive improved results in their role, not talk about us and what we do. When you're doing outbound prospecting, if you talk about yourself and your company, what you offer and the attributes of how it all works, if that's what you do, you will inadvertently create comparison with competition and invite questions about price. And if you talk about you and what you do and you try and start at a higher level in the organization, you're also inviting the problem of being delegated down and away, because you don't sound like you deserve to be talking to a leader if you're not talking about what they care about. So what I learned was when I'm running outbound, have a point of view on how that person can drive improved results in their role. Don't be arrogant. Make sure it's researched and credible, but lead with why they should care about talking with us, not with what we do. And then with inbound, there were 3 magic questions that I learned in my sales career. And I really hope this will help you. For those watching this, I've had feedback from hundreds of people around the world on how this has helped them transform results. So here's the 3 magic questions on inbound. The lead comes in. You say, hey, look, thanks for sending through the spreadsheet with the 784 questions. I'll definitely fill all that out and send it back to you. But do you mind if I ask? Here's question 1. Hey, what's happened inside the organization that's caused you to want to have a look at this now? So you're trying to get to the trigger event or the root cause. What's really gone on?
Yes.
Here's the second question. Hey, if you were to implement something, whether it was with us or anybody else, what are the improved results that you're looking for, both for you personally and also for the organization? Now, if they say, hey, look, Tony, I don't even know why you're asking, just fill in the damn spreadsheet and send it back with your price. You say, hey, look, the reason I'm asking is I work with a lot of people in your situation regularly, and it's not uncommon for an organization to task someone in your role to go and evaluate the market and even to task you with implementing something. But unless it has the right level of executive commitment and support and funding and resources behind it, your project's got an unnecessarily high level of risk right out of the gate. So I'm just trying to understand what your business case looks like and what you're really trying to achieve. I've really got no chance of giving you the right response back. I can't really fill in this spreadsheet and give you the right proposal unless I understand what you're really trying to achieve as an organization, which really leads me to my third question, Mary or Chris. Where do you see the risks? Where do you see the risks in getting this done successfully? And again, if they say, well, what do you mean? So, well, there's typically 3 key areas of risk that you need to manage in a project like this. Now, here's the thing. What we know from all of the research is the person that helps the buyer with their business case to secure the right level of funding and resources, the seller who helps them secure consensus with their team internally, with all of those key stakeholders, the people involved in implementing change, the seller who helps them have clarity about the results that need to be achieved and where the risks are in achieving those results. The seller that does all of those things, that's the one who becomes the emotional favorite. And the buying committee or team, the people who make the decision, will think, you know what? There's 2 or 3 vendors that we're speaking with that can all do the job, right? They've all got lots of references. They all claim to have all of this capability. They've all got some analyst report that says they're great. But you know what? I want to go with Tony and his team because they took the time to understand us. They've helped us identify where our risks are in what we're really trying to achieve. We've got the most confidence that they can help us get the outcome. Why would we jeopardize getting this result that we're doing all of this for, right? We're doing all of this to get a result. Why would we jeopardize those results by going cheap? So you want lower price to be seen as a big risk for them. So just think about reframing inbound engagements around what's happened, what do they really need to achieve, and how can they manage their risks? And that'll give you the opportunity to change the rules in the engagement in the best interest of the client and really positively differentiate, not based on product and price, but differentiate based on the way that you engage the buyer.
Yes. Well, there were a lot of nuggets right there, and we just got started with this conversation, and it's already been worth the price of admission. I'm sure the audience is getting a lot of value out of this, and I want to take a quick moment to tell them, guys, make sure you just stay to the end of the conversation. We've got a lot of topics to hit. I'm going to be asking Tony about RSVP selling and his combo prospecting framework. I'm going to be asking him about how technology has changed the way we sell, because he's got a new book out on that. And probably a few other questions like pitfalls at different stages of the sales journey. So again, guys, make sure to stay for the whole conversation to get the most value. Tony, before going to, because I do want to get into RSVP selling and what that's all about. I wanted to ask you about that IBM deal where you sold at 70% higher prices and you won the deal. I'm sure some of the things you've shared so far played a part in that success, but can you extract kind of the nuggets from that experience and like how you were able to achieve that?
Yeah, and when I think back to that deal, the strongest thing I remember is being in the office of my own CEO. The management team wanted us to discount deeply to win the deal. And normally the reverse is going on. Normally the salesperson is trying to convince management to discount to win the deal.
Yeah.
Management were trying to tell me we needed to discount to de-risk winning the deal. And I said, no, I believe we can win the deal at higher rates. If we go back to why IBM has come to market, they've come to market because they've lost a very large client. And the reason they lost the large client is they weren't servicing the account at the service levels that they'd been contracted to achieve, right? And when they dug into why that was happening, their technicians that get on site to fix the problems with, big mainframe hardware back in the day, right? So everything's obviously run in the cloud today. Failover is much more seamless, with tech today, with distributed architecture and cloud architecture. But back then, right, if you got a mainframe running in the computer room of a big organization, if it goes down, right, the service levels just needed to be hit. Now, if the technicians weren't receiving the message because they were in another client's computer room where RF, radio frequency coverage, was difficult, and that message didn't get through to them. And again, with radio paging, it gets blasted out. You don't know whether it was received. It was one-way communication. And if they're trying to phone the techs, and again, this is pre-mobile phones, and even with mobile phone signal, it was really difficult in those environments as well. So there was a big commercial reason that they were going to market, and they didn't want to jeopardize these multi-gazillion dollar contracts. They didn't want to jeopardize it by going cheap, right, with the messaging provider that gets their technicians on site for clients with very aggressive service levels in contracts. So I said, it's not about price, right? The money we charge is pennies. It's a tiny amount of money in the overall scheme of things for IBM. So we've done the job. We've understood what they're really trying to achieve and where their risks are. They've tested our network nationally against all of the other providers. That's part of the process, is they had workers with multiple companies' devices and clipboards walking around, going into computer rooms. It was basically a time and motion study in how much messaging was all received. I had a good coach in the deal that wanted us to win for his own integrity reasons. He wasn't favoring me for any salesy relationship reasons. He knew that we had the best network with the least amount of traffic on it, because traffic and congestion in a network causes problems. So we had the best network technically with the least congestion, and all of the testing had shown that we were the best provider for them. He absolutely believed that and knew it, right? And he'd shared with me that we'd come up most strongly in all of these testing results. So I knew at the end of the day, there'd be a bunch of senior managers sitting around a boardroom table inside IBM, and that they would say, this is the provider that we want to go with. Let's not jeopardize our own careers. Let's not jeopardize IBM's revenue streams and reputation by going cheap, right? It's not about going cheap. Now, had we lost the deal, I probably would have got fired. Right? Well, because
I love the courage you had, and that you were willing to risk, and it had an incredible payoff for you and for IBM or your company. But wow, you put it on the line, you could have lost your job.
Yeah, but I said I believe we can win this deal at higher margins, and we deserve those higher margins because we're going to be giving IBM very high levels of service, right? We want IBM to be a profitable customer for us. They want to be a profitable customer for us because they want us to be able to invest in giving them the service levels that enable them to be successful in the marketplace. So to me, this all goes back to selling integrity, right? I believed that we were absolutely the best fit for the customer. I believed that we could maintain integrity in our pricing. And I believed that we needed to justify the very high levels of investment in servicing IBM as a customer into the future. and they've remained a customer basically forever with this company.
So can you tell me now and us about RSVP selling? I don't know why I'm struggling saying RSVP so much today, but it's okay, we're working through. Can you talk about that and how the audience can apply it?
Okay, so this is really a meta framework, right? So it sits on top of any other sales methodology that you may be familiar with. So if you're in B2B enterprise selling watching this now, maybe you use Miller-Hyman blue sheets as a methodology for managing a complex deal. Maybe you're using TAS, maybe the TAS 20 questions, maybe using MEDIC or MEDPIC, as a framework for managing deal risk, or Art Jacobs battle plan. There's all of these frameworks for managing deal risk. But what RSVP selling is about is, how do you think intuitively in a way that manages your deal risk? And in my experience, there's 4 key areas of risk in a deal. And this is where the RSVP acronym comes in. There's relationship risk, there's strategy risk, there's value creation risk. I'll talk about all of these individually in a moment. And there's process alignment risk. So if you can manage risk in the areas of relationships, strategy, value creation, and process alignment, you've got your deal covered. And if you just think about RSVP, you could have the conversation. If you're a sales manager, you could have the conversation with one of your reps in a coffee shop. Hey, draw out on the back of the napkin here on the table, or the placemat here on the table, draw out the relationships. Where is our relation coverage strong and weak? Where does our competitor have relationships? Who is it we haven't covered? How do we map our team into their team more effectively? So think about relationship coverage. Next thing is strategy. Do we have a strategy for managing the political risk inside that org chart? And do we have a strategy for managing competitive risk? So do we know who we're competing against? What's our strategy to make sure that we are positively differentiated against competition? Third thing is value creation. Is the business case for change compelling? Is there strong commercial value in doing this that makes it a priority? So value creation is critical. Our biggest competitor in every deal is status quo, apathy, do nothing. It's so common for clients to go to market and look at something and they go, wow, we've learned a lot. There was more to this than we thought. It's a little bit confusing. We probably don't have enough budget to go and do this properly. Let's think about it some more. And it's easy for a financial leader to say, do you know what? Rather than change, let's just sweat the existing asset a little longer, or let's squeeze the incumbent for a better deal, and let's just push this off another year or two. It's really common. So there needs to be compelling commercial value in investing in the pain of change, in the cost and risk of change. So value is really important. And then the P in RSVP is, do we truly understand the customer's process and timing? How do they evaluate, make the decision? How do they run their procurement process? So that's where we need to build a mutual plan. Some of us might know that as a closed plan. Yes. Don't call it a closed plan with the prospect. No one wants to be closed by the seller. But they are happy to look at a project alignment plan, right? Or a mutual plan. When you build one of these closed plans or mutual plans, don't have it end at the date that they give us the purchase order or sign the contract. Have it end with a post-implementation review and a benefits realization presentation to the executive team at the customer. Because what that does is it shows the right intent. It sends the message, hey, unlike all of our competitors that have commission breath and just want to convince you to buy from them, unlike all of them, we are all about you achieving the result that you've promised to the board and the executive team in this initiative, right? So you're showing that we're all about getting the result. That's why we're lowest risk and best value. So that's what RSVP selling is. And I've had leaders, say to me, they've sat down with a rep in a coffee shop, and in 20 minutes, they've identified, you know what? This deal does not belong in the forecast. There's significant risk, and we've identified 3 key actions to try and dial those risks down. So my very first book is called The Joshua Principle, Leadership Secrets of Selling. It's available as an audio book. and an ebook. If you want the paperback, go to tonyhughes.com.au, tonyhughes.com.au. And that was my first book. I've self-published that. It's in its 10th printing. And then my second book was Combo Prospecting, because what I found was RSVP selling helps solve the problem of managing the complex sale, right? To solve the problem of managing the complex sale. What I found was that's not the number one problem that people have. The number one problem people have is not enough opportunity pipeline in the first place, right? They don't have enough deals. And then they're doing all of these unnatural acts, trying to, artificially bring deals forward because they failed to create enough pipeline.
Yes.
So Combo Prospecting is my second book. That's published by the American Management Association and HarperCollins out of the States, out of New York. And that's about nailing your narrative. So you need a value narrative, a conversation narrative, rather than being about us and what we do. It's all about the customer's opportunity to drive improved results in their role. It's a research credible point of view for how they can improve things in their business. And then once you've nailed the narrative, because that's a prerequisite, once you've done that, you then need to find a way to break through to busy people that are being blasted by spam in their life. And what that means is we need to pattern interrupt the way that buyers ignore strangers, sellers, and marketers. So the book talks about how you can do that. And then the latest book that you can see over my shoulder here is Tech Powered Sales. I co-authored that with Justin Michael, who's based in the States. That's about how do you apply technology? Because we all know that in selling, you need high levels of emotional intelligence, EQ. You need reasonable, you don't need super high levels, but you need reasonable levels of IQ. You can't be dumb and be successful in life, right? But you need very high levels of EQ, understand yourselves and others and how to manage politics and manage yourself well. You can't be dumb, but then there's another Q that we need, and that's TQ. We need technical quotient today. We are right in the midst of the fourth industrial revolution. It's changing the world in insane ways. A lot of it's very silent. I predict in tech-powered sales that about a third of field B2B sellers will disappear this decade.
Wow.
That's a bold claim, I know, right?
Wow.
But if you think about what's going on in the world, if you think about fighter pilots, as we record this, the Top Gun movie is about to come out, right? Top Gun Maverick. I cannot wait to see that movie. The most spectacular. I used to be a pilot, but so I've got a passion for flying. But the most spectacular flying sequences and visuals ever recorded in the aviation industry, right? The actors are really in U.S. Navy fighter aircraft pulling up to 8 Gs, and they're having to self-direct themselves in the cockpit. They had to understand lighting. They had to turn all the cameras on and start recording. They had to train the actual Navy fighter pilots that are really flying the plane. The actors are in the passenger seat, obviously. But they had to train the fighter pilots on how to frame and lighting and everything else for getting all the other aircraft in scenes. But it's going to be incredible. But here's the thing. If you think about fighter pilots, that's an amazing set of skills that they bring to bear. The careers of fighter pilots are all going to disappear, right? There'll be a few specialist fighter pilots, but swarm technologies and drone aircraft and everything else and tech and AI is changing the way the wars are fought. We're seeing this in the Ukraine. It is incredible. It is incredible how 2 or 3 guys with a shoulder-mounted weapon can walk through the forest and then take out, $70 million aircraft and tanks in massive groups, right? With a $30,000 weapon, right? It's incredible. Drones that they're using that go into the battlefield that got about 20 minutes endurance, and when they find a target, they just go and take it out, right? So the Ukraine is in many ways is winning the war against Russia. They're winning the war against Russia, and they don't have any air superiority at all. So winning a war has all been redefined. It doesn't matter that much about air superiority with fighter aircraft. It doesn't matter that much how amazingly better your tanks are, right? These small groups of people with tech can just go and take them out. So whether it's aviation, whether it's law, whether it's accounting, there's many white collar professions that are being disrupted by AI and tech. And for anyone to believe that selling is immune is just living in a fool's paradise. So what tech powered sales talks about is, how do I become a little cyborg? That's the imagery we've got in the book, right? How do we become?
It looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
Cyborg.
So, yeah, exactly. I've got an image of me being half cyborg, but how do we become a little cyborg where we apply the best of being human, the things that humans do really well, which is storytelling, creativity, building a business case, building emotional connection, securing consensus with a group of people, navigating the politics. AI will never do those things. So let's focus our human capabilities on those elements, but then not do what tech can do better for us. So for example, technology can go out and identify target organizations that fit our ideal customer profile. We can automate that. Technology can monitor for trigger events that give us context for running outreach to somebody, right? So tech's very good at sifting through the noise. There's amazing tech right now, for example, that can record and transcribe a call, get those notes automatically into your CRM. It can automatically do coaching about talk time and buying signals, around a particular call. Sorry for coughing. I'm still getting over COVID.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. No, it's all good. Everybody's going to get COVID, right?
Yeah, I've had it.
Yeah. So the reality is, if you can apply technology to leverage what it does best, and then focus on the truly human elements, you can become superhuman. And they're the sellers that will continue to thrive, right? Don't focus your sales energies on things that could be automated with technology, and learn how to embrace and use effectively your own tech stack. Like, understand, the capabilities in your own CRM. Start building your own dashboards, build workflows. If you're using a sales engagement platform like SalesLoft or Outreach.io, or HVS, high velocity sales or selling inside Salesforce, learn how to use those tools really well for building cadences and sequences. Learn how to go and install the Chrome plugins that can give you people's cell phone numbers, email addresses.
This is a great one of that.
Yeah, exactly. Learn how to use Sales Navigator properly. Most sellers just fumble around in the dark when it comes to using Sales Nav. So become really good at the tech would be my advice.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be so hard, right? And we don't have to spend so much time on these undifferentiated tasks. We can focus more on what makes us human, like you put so beautifully, which is our creativity, our ability to connect. And that's the fun part of selling. So you really encourage me to do a little more due diligence on how I can get more out of this technology, because I'm still in a 9-to-5 sales job, which I'm enjoying. So really helpful. And we talked about the tech side of sales and how things will be evolving. And I wanted to go back to the human side a bit. And my question has to do with what you're talking about when it comes to combo prospecting. How do you come up with a good sales story, and what should it look like? Maybe we could just give a concrete, hypothetical example for the audience.
Well, let me provide a real example, and I'm going to share this example with the permission of my customer. So one of my biggest clients globally is a travel management company. So they run the corporate travel management program. So if an employee wants to book a trip from New York to LA, the travel management company runs that whole process. When COVID hit 2 years ago, their leadership team called me, and they operate in North America, Europe, all through Asia Pacific. Their leadership team called me and said, "Hey, Tony, our account managers with existing clients and our account executives for winning new logo accounts are both getting the same pushback when they call a customer or a prospect." And here's what it sounds like. The customer says, "Hey, look, I don't even know why you're calling me. None of my staff are traveling. Phone me back when the airlines are in the air." Now that sounds like a pretty valid and brutal objection, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's actually not.
Wow.
Now, I'll tell you what we came up with. And as a result, this company, my customer, has converted hundreds and hundreds of competitor accounts over to them in the last 2 years during COVID. And as travel is turning all back on, as the world all turns back on now, it's with this company as the travel management company, not the competition. And a lot of the competitors haven't even figured out they've lost the customer. So here's what we did. I said, let's phone the CFO. Let's build a conversation narrative with the head of finance, the CFO, that speaks to how they're measured in their role. A CFO is measured by the CEO, typically on cost control and cost out. What are you doing to drive down costs? What are you doing to control costs? Now, there's other measures as well, like cash flow and average daily sales outstanding to try and collect cash. Like there's other measures, but those two are front and center, cost control and cost out. So let's build a narrative that speaks to that. We're not going to talk about our pricing that we charge, like our booking fee for a trip. We're not going to talk about our fee. That's a race to the bottom, and that's leading with price. We're not doing that, but let's talk to how this person's measured in their role. So here's the conversation. Hey, Mary, it's Tony from FCM Travel. Hey, look, reason for the call, with none of your staff traveling right now, I think there could be a way for you as CFO to drive somewhere between 8 to 12% of cost out in what will return to be the third to fifth biggest expense line item on your P&L. And with no one traveling, you've got no change management issues, and you've got the bandwidth in your admin team. Do you mind if I ask, when's the last time that you reviewed your travel policy and the way that you're running it as a process inside the organization? And that narrative has been phenomenally successful. And the mindset is we're making the excuse for not wanting to talk to us. We're making that the very reason why they should.
Wow.
We're killing the objection that can reasonably be anticipated. The objection, very reasonably, you can anticipate will be, you're a travel management company. No one's flying. Why the hell are you calling me? There's no point us having a conversation. We've anticipated that objection and killed it by saying, hey, Mary, with none of your staff traveling right now. Like we're acknowledging no one's traveling. That's why I'm calling, right? It's a bit intriguing, right? And then we're speaking to how the person's measured in their role. They can go to their boss, the CEO. Then they can say, hey, Mike, I've initiated a little project that's going to drive somewhere between 8 and 12% of cost out. While we've got the bandwidth, while we don't have any while we don't have any change management issues, because in most companies with travel programs, the inmates run the asylum. Individuals book trips on their own personal credit card and with their favorite airline and with their favorite hotel, all of which to maximize their own points so they can go have a free holiday with their family at the end of the year based on all of those amassed points, right? And you try and change that on people, you get a rebellion, right? So it's the perfect time, right? And the CEO goes, wow, what a great CFO who's taking what's going on in the market right now and using it to drive cost out and position us to be a more profitable, better controlled organization. We're eliminating the risk of travel freezes, which can kill winning a deal if our sales team can't fly across the country because sellers put in 5 months of expense claims, and blew out the budget in a quarter, right? They're getting rid of all of that risk as well. So that's an example of building the right narrative. Really, really key.
Thank you for giving that great real world example. Super helpful. And I know the audience and myself can take action on that to think about how we could apply it to our own narratives. And I wanted to ask one follow-up question on combo prospecting, which is the other piece, which is the pattern interrupt piece. So can we give an example of pattern interrupt and maybe how that would look on a call? And in a way you did that there, but what does pattern interrupt look like?
So we all need to get back on the phone. There's been a lot of lies propagated in the marketplace around social selling. Now, I'm a fan of social selling. I became the the third most influential person in the world on the LinkedIn platform. There's 800 million members. By publishing a lot of content and engaging with people, I've got 500,000 followers in social. So I'm a fan of social, right? It's not that I've failed at social and that's why I'm against it. And I have more work coming to me than I can cope with, right? I don't have to do any outbound prospecting.
Because I wanted to ask you that, sorry to interrupt you also to speak
Yeah.
to social. So we're talking about pattern interrupt, but I'm glad you brought that up. I wanted to get your thoughts. Like LinkedIn is, I just put out a video on 10 ways to improve your LinkedIn because it's so great. So just quick aside.
Yeah. So
Well,
I'm a fan of LinkedIn. You cannot be successful in B2B selling without using LinkedIn really well, right? And Get Sales Navigator, right? So I'm a fan. But here's the thing. If you adopt this passive, I'll groom my personal brand and reach out to people and connect in LinkedIn, and that's prospecting, again, you're living in a fool's paradise. It's too passive. What we need to do is we need to get back on the phone, right? So by all means, research a person, send them a connection request, but never connect and sell. Don't say, hey, Mike, congratulations on being a fan of the Lakers. We're the market leader in, and I'd love to, get 15 minutes with you and tell you about the joys and wonders of what we do, right? Never try and connect and sell ever. Never try and connect in a way that's disingenuous, right? But you want to get them to accept that connection request, because if they do, then often you can see their email address and their mobile phone number in their connection details on LinkedIn. If you're using LinkedIn free, if they accept the connection request, now you can send them an in-mail, right? Now with Navigator, you can send in-mails to people that aren't first-degree connections.
Yes.
But if you're going to research and you're there, maybe connect to them or engage in their content. But then when you want to run your first real sequence, I call a sequence a combo. It's an initial number of touches. What I say is lead with the phone. Phone their cell phone. Their cell phone will ring and they'll go, don't know who it is, not in my address book. I'll let it go through to voicemail. That's okay. 20 seconds later, ding. Oh, whoever it was left a voicemail. I wonder who it was. And they'll listen to the voicemail. Don't give your pitch. Just say, hey, Chris, it's Tony from Sales IQ. Just looking to get 10 minutes with you next week. I'll send you an email. That's all I do.
So a little mysterious.
Yeah. And then you, Chris, think, I wonder what about? I wonder what that's about. And then your phone goes ding. Oh, there's a new email in my inbox. It's from Tony. What you've done in that little triple phone, voicemail, email is you've made their device ring, ding, and bing, and you've driven up dramatically the open rates on an email. Whereas if you just send email, if you just blast out a whole bunch of emails to people and nothing else happens, within seconds, it's just another email they ignore. I'm ashamed to say this, but I've got right now 23,000 unread emails in my inbox. I add to that the 340,000 followers and connections I've got in LinkedIn. I then imagine the in-mails I get in LinkedIn, plus my 23,000 unread emails, plus Skype messages, WhatsApp messages, all of these other teams and chat channel groups and messages. Like I'm just drowning in crap. And most of it is rubbish, right, that I get bombarded with. And every time I get into my inbox, I'm just skimming.
Yes.
So an email on its own that looks like it's from a stranger or a seller or a marketer is just ignore or delete in my mind. So the message has to be right. If someone phoned me and said, hey, Tony, it's Chris and I'm from XYZ PR company and we're the market leader PR agency for aspiring authors. Like, I'm just thinking, no, I don't have a budget for PR agency. I don't have time to talk to PR agency. Every one of my books is a business bestseller. Not interested. But imagine if, Chris, you rang and said, hey, Chris, it's Tony from XYZ. I love tech-powered sales, especially all the cyborg imaging. Look, the reason for the call is I think there could be a way for you to drive $250,000 of speaking revenue off the back of the book. Am I in? Absolutely, yes. So what you've done is the narrative, the message, the value messaging, the value in a conversation for me is, hey, this guy's got some ideas on how I could drive $250,000 of speaking revenue off the back of the book. I wonder how he thinks I could do that. I'm in for the conversation. But if you rang and said, let me tell you about our agency, my immediate emotional guttural reaction is I'm not looking for a PR agency in my life. I haven't planned to spend money on a PR agency. I don't think I need a PR agency, right? So we create our own objections typically in how we open, right? We create the objection. So it needs to be a relevant, credible research point of view on how they can drive improved results. So if you believe in the message, remember I said selling's about the transference of belief,
Yes.
about transference of belief, then we can be bold. So phone, voicemail, phone, voicemail, email is the initial triple. 48 hours later, I phone again. Hey, Chris, it's Tony. I'm just following up. I'm wondering how Tuesday, 8:15 next week works for you. I'll send you a calendar invitation. So then I hang up. Then I bump the email from 48 hours earlier. I bump it back. Hey, Chris, just following up. I'm wondering how Tuesday works. I'll send you a calendar invitation. Send that. Then I send a calendar invitation. So now I've done a quad. So in 48 hours, I've had 7 touches. On average, it takes 7 to 13 touches for a buyer to respond to a seller who is a stranger, right? They haven't dealt with them before. 7 to 13 touches. The way we need to feel is give me some engagement, give me a conversation, give me some engagement, or give me a valid no, but do not ignore me. This is important. Do not ignore me. We don't say that, by the way. It's arrogant, right? But the way we feel is don't ignore me, give me a valid no, or give me some engagement, right?
Yes.
It's really, really key. So, that'd really, really be the key takeaways for people as we wrap up.
Yeah, you know what great practical advice, and what a great way to wrap up the conversation. But I did have 1 or 2 final questions as we wrap up. And again, I want to thank you for your time. And when you described how much you're being bombarded with different outreach, it made me so grateful that you responded to my LinkedIn. And so I want to thank you for that and for the contribution you've been in this conversation to me and the audience. So, but there's the mantra of this channel is sell more and live more. And we hit a lot on the sell more, but I'd love to get your wisdom on a loaded question. And just why not? What do you think it takes to live a full and meaningful life? And feel free to, share how you think sales fits into it as a career, but really it could be philosophical answer, but based on your experience, I'd love to get your flavor of an answer.
Well, Chris, I believe that people will look back on this decade, the front half of this century, and just shake their heads. They'll look back on this period of time, viewing it as one of the most materialistic and narcissistic periods in history. Everyone seems to be trying to live a purpose-driven life, but a lot of their purposefulness is manifesting itself as being all about them. It's all about them and their virtuousness, if that's even a word, right? So how virtuous they are, with their particular causes. And I just find that people are very much about themselves. This peak of Maslow's hierarchy of needs with self-actualization, I think is manifesting in societies in a really bad way most of the time. So I believe that you find purpose and meaning in service, right? So think about how can I make a difference to other people, not through my virtue signaling, but through my actual service. Find a cause that you believe in, build positive relationships with people, and in serving others and not being all about yourself, and compare yourself not with others, but compare yourself with where you were at yesterday. Are you becoming a little better every day? Focus more on listening and understanding, rather than telling and proclaiming your point of view, would really be my advice. And if you're in selling, the way often this manifests is be genuinely curious about the world of your customer. What really are the pressures and the challenges that they're dealing with? What is it that they're really trying to achieve, as an organization? What are they trying to achieve for their customers? And how can I help them drive those results faster to an even greater degree with even better results, but with less risk? And if your point of view is on how, they can have bigger impact with stronger results, reaching more people and in a way that they do it all with less risk, people will really lean into those conversations. And we're beginning with the right intent, because so many sellers just come across with this intent is I'm all about me and what we do and convincing you that it's great and making you become a customer. But we want to move away from that and just think about genuine fit and how can I best serve others?
Yes. So basically, we can up our game around being other-oriented, focused on others, upping our service, and that'll make all the difference in life. And I feel like we came full circle in the conversation because you did mention the Zig Ziglar quote of, if we can help enough people get what they want, we'll get what we want too. So Tony, what a beautiful bow in the conversation. I want the audience to know that I've linked Tony's website in the description of this video. I've linked Tech Powered Sales, his newest book, which I'm going to check out myself. I encourage you to do that. And I'll link your other books too, because I know you have quite a few. Are there any other calls to action, Tony, in terms of maybe add you on LinkedIn? I know you have a million requests though, but what's a good call to action for the audience aside from those things?
Yes, I'd really encourage you to connect with me in LinkedIn. So just search in LinkedIn for Tony J. Hughes. There's a whole bunch of Tony Hugheses. So just Tony J. Hughes in LinkedIn. Feel free to connect directly with me as well as follow me.
Yes.
TonyHughes.com.au is my personal website where there's lots of podcasts, webinars, masterclasses, all for free. Details on my books are there as well. And if you're looking to get really good at building sales pipeline, there's a Create Pipeline program. It's an e-learning program with a 12-week peer support group. That's really worth signing up to. And you can see that it's linked from my Tony Hughes website, but you can go to Sales IQ Global, salesiqglobal.com. So Chris, thanks so much for having me on. And I just wish everybody every success as you seek to make a positive difference in the lives of your customers.
Tony, thanks so much. And to the audience, if you like this video and got value out of it, which I'm sure you did, make sure to give that like button a love tap. The YouTube algorithm loves that too, and will show this video to more people who could benefit from the message. And make sure to subscribe for weekly tech sales and personal growth hacks that you can chew on like snacks. Happy selling and happy living, guys. Talk soon.